Thanks for tuning in to another great episode of Deac2Deac. Today's guest is two-time national field hockey champion, Lauren Crandall. Lauren's going to share her story about how she got into field hockey, why she chose Wake Forest, and what it was like to lead not one, but two national teams in the Olympics. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications for your favorite podcast, Deac2Deac. Let's take a listen and go Deacs. Here we go. So let's start from the origin. So you grew up in Pennsylvania, right? Which part?
Actually, two different parts. So I was born in Pittsburgh, and then we moved to Doylestown, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour north of Philadelphia. And then in fourth grade, I moved back to Pittsburgh. And then in seventh grade, we moved back to Doylestown, Pennsylvania. So my dad basically just kept getting transferred within his company. So for the majority of my time, I spent in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, but also lived in Pittsburgh for a bit.
So if I'm not mistaken, soccer was your first love.
It truly was.
What was the soccer scene like growing up in Pennsylvania?
I mean, that in my mind, that was the sport. Now that could have been because I'm the youngest of four. My brother played basketball, was his big thing, but we all played every single sport. My oldest sister was into soccer. My other sister just above me was volleyball. So I played everything. Whatever my siblings were playing, I played. But soccer, I think it's the first sport, that your parents throw you and like, oh, you're 3 and you can walk, go ahead onto this soccer field and kick this. That was just soccer and basketball were my sports. I grew up playing those. And if I hadn't moved, honestly, if we would have stayed in Pittsburgh in seventh grade, I probably would have never picked up a field hockey stick. So it's kind of interesting what life can bring you when changes happen.
So how did that move influence you picking up the field hockey stick?
So I will answer that, and I feel old when I say it, but you're older than I am, so it's fine.
Oh, so you just go put it on me now. Now that builds your confidence that you're talking to someone older. Okay.
Yeah, totally. So when I moved from, so in Pittsburgh, women's soccer, or I guess they call it girls soccer in high school, was a fall sport, and so was field hockey. And my sister was on the high school soccer team, so I was the ball girl at North Allegheny High School, and was loved the head coach there. Loved the fact that I was just this young girl who aspired to one day, play for him. Didn't know field hockey existed. And then in seventh grade, we moved back to Doylestown, and some of the friends I had when we lived there before that I played soccer with, we were now in middle school. And oddly enough, our middle school team didn't have a girls soccer team. It was co-ed, they said, but girls didn't make the team, essentially. So I needed a sport for the fall. And all my friends who were on my soccer team, my club soccer team, were like, oh, we played field hockey last year. I had just missed seventh grade field hockey season. So they had all just come off of it. And they were like, it's so fun. It's great. You'll play next year. I'm like, okay, cool. I need a sport to play. So eighth grade, I pick up a field hockey stick and I'm like, okay, now what? They're like, it's just like soccer. Just don't use your feet. I'm like, cool. So I just started playing.
Now, you describe it as, hey, I just started playing, but you started playing. You turned that into winning national championships and being a part of Olympic teams. So I want to ask you, where did field hockey become that dominant sport for you? Again, you played everything, soccer, basketball. So when did field hockey take over as, okay, this is my sport?
I love this question. So again, I picked up a stick as my third sport because I just needed a sport to play for that season. Legitimately learned the rules 2 years later when I was a sophomore in high school, when my high school coach, who actively recruited soccer players for his field hockey team. Tactically, the sports are so similar. So he was notorious for taking soccer players because in that area in Eastern Pennsylvania, girls soccer was a spring sport. So you could play field hockey in the fall and then play soccer in the spring. So he's like, all right, these soccer players are athletic. They understand tactically a lot of the game. So it wasn't until probably going into high school, which was 10th grade for us. Middle school was 7, 8, 9. High school was 10, 11, 12. When I was going into, I think, my sophomore year of high school, I knew soccer was still number one. I went to a basketball camp at my high school, and the high school coach, at some point, I remember him saying, maybe through the grapevine, I don't think it was directly to me, but he was like, hey, you need to pick between soccer, field hockey, and basketball. You can't play all of them. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, if you're making me choose a sport, I'm not choosing yours because I don't want to choose a sport. Like, I just think I don't think that's what we should be asking young kids, right? There's just so much to explore. I picked up a stick in 8th grade late for field hockey, and it's a whole new sport that took me down a completely different path that I thought I would have went on. So I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to play your sport. So I quit basketball. So then it was between soccer and field hockey. My theory is field hockey was so new, so it was familiar in that tactically it's close to soccer, but it's, again, I learned the rules 2 years later. My high school coach was instrumental in developing my love for the game, because he was an NHL player himself. He played for the Flyers for a few years, Jeff Harding. And he was just so eager to teach and learn and made things exciting that, like, you loved going to practice. My thirst for wanting to play was just beginning, because again, I was only 2 years in. And the more I started playing field hockey, and he started introducing me to indoor field hockey, and I got onto a club team for field hockey. It was, before I really realized it, my junior year, I was playing more field hockey than I was soccer. And so around my junior year, I was like, okay, do I really want to play soccer club? And I kind of took a step back from that. And it's kind of just field hockey took over with, that's where I wanted to spend my time. That's where I found myself spending the most amount of time and being excited, because there was still so much for me to learn and so many opportunities, that probably the end of my junior year, when it came to high school soccer season, I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep playing. I'm going to play my high school soccer season, but I'm going to keep playing field hockey club. And I loved it. The opportunities I got and the travel. So around that time is when my love for field hockey was really starting to ascend, and soccer was just something I did to stay in shape for field hockey, to be honest.
So when did you know that you were really good? I mean, you won a state championship in high school. You were getting recruited. When did you know, okay, I could do something with this beyond high school at a high level? What was that moment?
Probably when I showed up on the Wake Forest campus for my first day of preseason and ran the mile test. Was when I realized I was in the presence of greatness, but I was not yet there. That was honestly, I didn't realize. I mean, I guess I was highly recruited, but because I started so late, I didn't make the U16 junior national team. I didn't make the U21 team until my freshman year in college. So I was never in really the pipeline of USA field hockey. My high school field hockey and club field hockey always took precedent over any of the pipeline junior national team events, just because of, that's kind of what my coach preached, like, this is the high school, this is our team, and you don't miss team events for individual honors or recognitions or selection camps. So I never really got into the junior national team cycle. Didn't realize the programs that were recruiting me were top level programs. I had great universities that were looking at me from an education standpoint, but I didn't know who was good in field hockey on the university level. I hadn't really looked into it. So I think when I committed, I was the 6th member of my class out of 6 to commit. So I was the last person of my field hockey class to commit to Wake Forest. And I committed October 19th sticks out in my head. Well, that is the first year that they won the national championship. And I remember looking at my mom and being like, what do they want with me? Like, what am I doing? Like, what did I just sign myself up for? Because I chose Wake Forest because of the team atmosphere, and the team relationship with the coaching staff. What Jen Averill created there was something that was very special and very familiar, and very value centric to what my high school experience was, being on a team and that team camaraderie. And I never saw him play a game. I watched 2 practices, but I loved the team. I knew education wise, it was a great school. So I did not know that they were a top contender in Division I field hockey until after they won the national championship. And I was like, I am a little concerned that I've gotten myself into this. So that was kind of the beginning of, okay, well, they're a special program. And if they want me, I guess I'm special too. But when I ran my first fitness test the first day of preseason, and I ran my best mile time I had ever run, and I finished last in my group. And that's when you're like, okay, like for me, the competitive nature where it's like, okay, this program won a national championship. They're on top of their game, and I'm the bottom of the barrel, and I cannot wait to earn my spot as part of this team in our 2003 season. So it was kind of like, this is where I want to be, on the bottom of the barrel at the top of the Division I game.
Well, a lot of people don't know about those conditioning tests. Every sport has them. For us in football, it was the 110 test. So what is that for? Just kind of let people know, the listeners know, what is that test really for, and what does it feel like to go through that?
Well, Kevin, we have multiple fitness tests in
Oh,
our preseason. So I would love to tell you it's just one, but how it worked that my freshman season, Jen split. So we had 3 different fitness tests that we had to run that year. And if I get this wrong, I wouldn't be shocked, but we did a 1-mile time. We did the gauntlet. I think we did the gauntlet, which is you run a mile and you rest like 3 minutes, you run half a mile, you rest a minute and a half, you run a 400, you rest like 30 seconds, and then you have a few hundreds to do or something. I think that was the second test. And then the third test, I think, was 1 minute 100s, which is on our field that's 100 yards long. You had to do 20 reps of sprint down in 20 seconds, jog back in 40 seconds. So on the minute, every minute, you're running basically like a 200 yards. So field hockey is an interesting sport in that you need to have endurance like you would soccer, right? You need to be able to run long distances, but you need to be able to sprint. You need to be able to get up and down because our positions with our stick really make us. So it's an interesting sport of you need to be the jack of all trades for fitness. And I think, my 4 years at Wake Forest, some of the fitness tests we did consistently, like the beep test, which is like a standard that a lot of endurance, like soccer and field hockey and those types of sports, they often use and run. But Jen and her coaching staff would mix it up a lot to try and figure out, okay, what is the best representative of this person's in shape? This person is prepared to go through an intensive preseason. And they have that capacity and fitness level that's not going to allow them to get injured. So in a way, you do the fitness test. As an athlete, you think it's just to earn your spot and show that you're in shape. But from a coaching staff, now that I'm older and wiser, and have been on some coaching staffs, it's really, does this person have the baseline fitness so that we can put them through the training we want to do and they're not going to get injured? And they're going to be able to sustain, the elite performance that we're looking for. So we've done sprint tests, we've done shuttle tests. We try and do a long distance and a short distance repeatability sprints, I would say.
You lost me, but you had my admiration when you said run the mile with 3-minute rest. That's
and then run more. Yeah.
Yes, I was done at that point. No, I'm not built that way. But what was it? What other schools did Wake Forest beat out in the recruiting process? That's what I love to hear.
Okay, I like it. I like it. So I'll go with an ACC rival first. I was looking at Duke.
Ooh.
They were in my final five. University of Michigan, Princeton, and University of Maryland were really the five that it came down to from a selection point, for me to decide.
Well, fast forward a little bit. You mentioned Duke. You guys actually beat them for the national championship, if I'm not correct. If I'm
We sure
correct,
did.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, twice.
that had to feel good. Uh,
It didn't feel bad. That's for sure.
so you come to Wake, and you're coming into this environment of, they just coming off winning a national championship team. Where did you see yourself fitting in once that season started, on the quest to the second national championship? Where did you see yourself?
So I've told this story to Jen, probably going into my sophomore year, but I remember vividly, my parents drove me down from Pennsylvania to Wake Forest. It's the day before preseason. So I think we had like a dinner that night with with our parents and the team's parents and everyone. And I remember walking onto the turf and at Kentner Stadium, and I looked to the left and I saw 2002 NCAA champions sign up there. And it was a feeling of disappointment because I was like, I was not part of that. Like I'm honored that I'm here, but it was a feeling of that's not mine. And when I stood there, I was like, I want to earn one of those. I want to be part of something that puts up another sign saying we're champions, right? It's kind of hard for our class to walk in. They've already won a national championship. So now you're kind of the top dogs. Did I walk into a program that I wasn't part of earning the past accolade that they were all responsible for earning? So not that it was intimidating, but it was a feeling of like, well, I want to earn that feeling that I don't belong to that, but I want to be part of something that can be great again. And the environment that Jen and her coaching staff created was the team culture was very inclusive, right? It wasn't a matter of you guys are the new guys, you don't belong here and this championship isn't yours. It was, hey, welcome to Wake Forest field hockey. This is what we've created. This is our past. This is what we've been through, starting with getting crushed by a lot of teams in the decade before. But Jen did a good job of saying, hey, here's our history. We may have won last year, but it's taken us a long time to get to where we're at. And we have a ways to go to show that we are a great program. And that's kind of where we started, is the welcoming of our teammates to say, hey, welcome to this culture. We want you to be part of it. And we need you to add to it so that we can keep creating a program that is going to be timeless in its greatness.
That's great. That you talked about that culture at Wake and being a part of it and being inclusive. So I want to ask you this: what was going through your mind when you were playing in the national championship game? And again, you mentioned you wanted yours. You wanted to be a part of putting that second banner up there. What was it like when you knew that moment? Let me change this. What was the moment when you knew, hey, we're going to get another banner? It's real. When was that moment?
When I would say when Katie Ackerman scored, was it the second goal? I can't remember. I think we won 3-1 in 2003. And you're going to have to check the history on that one. 3-0 maybe. But I remember Katie Ackerman scoring a pretty awesome goal. She was a senior at the time. And it was just kind of to be on the bus going to that national championship game and to be led by our senior class, our junior class, and our sophomore class of veterans who had been to a national championship game before in the previous year. They had that experience. The six of us freshmen were relying on them. We were excited, but they had a calm confidence of, we know what we're getting into. We've been here before. Follow us to get through your nerves, and we're going to take this victory. And I think it was when Katie Ackerman scored And we kind of went crazy where it's like, we are not letting this slip. Like, we're taking this game. We were also played, the championship was at University of Massachusetts, and Kelly Doughton and Kelly Dostal were both from Massachusetts. So they were excited that the Final Four was going to be there. And I remember them saying, we're winning this championship. This is our home turf and we're taking this. And so the confidence that our team had and what we had built throughout that season was something special, where it allowed us to take advantage of the opportunity and to set aside nerves and rely on the veterans who had been there before to carry us, and basically as a freshman, make sure that you did your part not to mess up and be able to give a championship to the university again.
So with that, you talked about playing the national championship in Massachusetts, and the third national championship of the field hockey program. I just want everybody to know that was correct. The third one was played in Winston-Salem, right? So it was sort of a home advantage. What was that like to play for the national championship literally at home? What did that feel like?
So to put it into context, I take a step back from the national championship game. And when you know at the beginning of your season you're hosting a Final Four, and your program is a two-time national champion, there is pressure. There's pressure that you don't want to be the ball girl during that Final Four, right? Because it's on your home turf. So you're expected to be there because we were probably number 1 or 2 preseason wise, but we'd won 2 national championships previously. Now we're hosting it. And if you're not in it, you're working it. So that was kind of our thought process in that season, is you can either work the Final Four and work the national championship, or you can play in it. It's your choice. What do you want to do? You better believe that a lot of us made the right decisions throughout that season to make sure that we were playing in that championship and we were not working it. It was honestly that game. I remember, I think that game we won 3-0. I knew a lot sooner in that game that we were winning it than I did the year previous.
Is that the one? I think you guys had the orchestrated celebration in that one. Is that correct?
You did, yeah. So I think we had a dominating performance that game. I remember my brother was there, and he left during the game to go get some victory celebrations that we could spray champagne and celebrate on the field in celebration. So that's how confident our families were that we were gonna win. But yeah, Christina Gagliardi, Gags was my class. We were sophomores, and she was our goalkeeper. She had injured herself earlier in the season, dislocated her shoulder, and it made us aware that if she were to do that in a game, we didn't have a viable backup. So one of the seniors who had previously left the team said that she would come back in a backup goalie capacity in case Gags couldn't play. Now Gags was able to play, and that was all fine, but to celebrate and orchestrate our celebration, Mary Lee was put in at the end of the game as a kind of thank you of, hey, we want to get you some minutes in here, but we appreciate you sacrificing your normal world life and coming onto our team to make sure that we had the confidence in a backup situation if there was an injury to our goalie. So I remember Chewy yelling at me like, hey, when the game's over, run to Mare and jump on her. So that's basically the communication message that we passed up the field, so that when the final whistle did blow, we all sprinted and tackled merrily. And those are all the pictures you see on our national championship 2004 photos is Mary Lee, who got a few minutes in the game, and not our actual goalie Gags, who had earned her spot in there. So I always feel a little bad about that, but hopefully she knows in her heart that she's the reason that we won that, that we got through that postseason. So yeah, it's nice to be able to take your attention away from the game and plan your celebration for a national championship and know that that's a good feeling.
You're right. I was not in that position to ever do that for a national championship, but there were some games where we knew We kind of had it, and on the sideline, the discussion had nothing to do with X's and O's. It was, okay, which goal post is it going to be that we're taking down? So I want to ask you this. You've got two national championships. Which one is the sweetest?
Oh man, I would say the first one, only because it was, at least for me, because I had walked in the beginning of that season, on that day of preseason, I had walked onto the turf with that feeling of, I want to be part of a championship. I want to be, not that I want to have my name up there, but I felt like that 2002 national championship had nothing to do with me, and I wanted um, to provide greatness to the program and be part of a championship team. And we were able to do it in 2003. So to be able to repeat for everybody else was awesome. To be a young freshman and be able to kind of stand on the shoulders of our veterans and experience that was a lot of lessons learned and pretty awesome. So I think just feeling like, okay, I'm now part of this. That was probably a more exciting emotion than helping to lead a team into our third championship, which was my second national championship.
That's awesome. So we're going to go with the first one was the sweetest, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I want to ask you this. So you start to you're going into your senior year, and you start playing for the national team in 2005, and that turned into being a part of three Olympic teams, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct.
So you were also chosen as captain for two of those Olympic teams. Kind of talk about what that Olympic experience was like. I mean, because your career just continued to go upward. I mean, you're winning at every level, and the Olympics, if I'm that's the world stage. What was it like to this game that you've played, that you started in eighth grade? Now you're in the Olympics. What was that like?
I would say the progression of that was similar to the humbling progression that my career at Wake Forest started out at.
Mm,
So anytime, so my senior year in high school, I won a state championship. So you go, you're at the height of that level. And then, as I just talked about, my first day of preseason, getting my personal best in my mile time was the slowest out of my entire group. So you have that, I'm stepping from high school to Division I field hockey on a national championship team, and it's a humbling, man, I'm the bottom of the barrel, and I cannot wait to learn and work my way up this ladder, right? I'm just the excitement to get better. The same thing happened when I went on to the national team. So I made the national team the end of my sophomore year in college, and my very first tour was to New Zealand, where I got my first what we call cap. So an officially recognized game for your country is called a cap for some reason. So mine was in New Zealand, and I will never forget the moment I fell in love with that level of international field hockey. I was going up against a New Zealand forward who was very experienced, and she burned me so bad with this one move. Like, I went all out to try and get this intercept. I thought I had it. She did this move that left me in the dust and on the ground on the wet turf. So I remember looking up and seeing her sprint to the cage. I think she probably had a one-on-one with our goalie. Sorry, Amy. But it was at that moment where I'm like, here I am again. Like, this is awesome. I just got absolutely destroyed. Like, I've won two national championships on the collegiate level, but now I'm on the international stage where the Olympic experience and the elite performance, there's such a big difference of, okay, now I'm starting over again, and I have this whole nother level of learnings ahead of me. And I was, at that moment, I was like, I remember emailing my junior national team coach, Tracy Fuchs, she's the coach at Northwestern. And I emailed her and was like, hey, I understand why you played for over 20 years on the national team. Like, I just fell in love with the game today because I had the most epic failure and embarrassment, and I can't wait to get better at this. So that's how my humbling journey of being on the national team started. And it was I mean, you see 3-time Olympian, but you don't see the trials and tribulations that go into that, into earning it. So of course, you get the blood, sweat, and tears, but there's a lot of failure that I had to learn how to use in order to grow and develop. Because in my high school and at Wake Forest, you put together the 7 years that I played on those, and I had lost maybe 7 or 8 games in a 7-year career. Like, that's unbelievable. The first 7 games on the national team, I think we lost. So it was learning how to set goals. It was learning what success is when the scoreboard doesn't show success. And because of the program at Wake Forest, and we won a lot. I'm very thankful that Jen and the coaching staff and my teammates would focus on the development of always improving, right? We're not happy with one national championship. We're not happy with the second national championship and losing an ACC championship. And, you're always aspiring to be great. And it's those lessons that you learn while doing that allowed me to kind of use as a foundation as I learned how to deal with losing, but finding successes throughout that. So my 3 Olympic experiences, 2008 to 2012 to 2016, can be explained as starkly different because of the stages of my career that I was in. As you mentioned, in 2012 and 2016, I was captain of those teams, and those 2 Olympic Games were very different experiences. And I have very specific lessons learned from each of them, especially in 2012, where as captain of the team, I captained us to last place finish. That never feels good. But that was reality. And I had, in evaluating our lead up to the 2012 Olympics and debriefing it and having conversations with teammates and trying to figure out what happened, that set my tone for how I was entering into the next cycle, which allowed me to be a better leader as I took a new group of individuals into the journey to the 2016 Olympics. And in my opinion, every single game and practice from high school to college to the 2008 Olympic, 2012 led up to our 2016 games, where we had our best ever finish, 5th place. So it was a full circle for me of a career, in a way.
I'm just noticing this part of your personality where you're just a fighter. Where, I mean, when I look back at it, and you take your adversity and you find the positive energy into it. Again, you came in and you looked at the banner at Wake and said, "Hey, I want to fight and earn my own." You came into the Olympic experience and said, "Hey, I'm going to learn from this being on this international stage. I'm going to continue to get better." When so many people choose to go the other route, where did that come from? This always seeming to find the positive energy in some of the most adverse situations. Where does that come from?
Um, I think you say fighter, which is that's cool. I'm glad you defined me like that. I mean, I would say competitor. I've always I love competing. I've always been very competitive, to the point where I had to learn how to be a positive team member while we were losing, but still keeping a competitive nature. I'm sure Jen would have many stories about that. But I think as it evolved, it came part of earning. When you say fighter, I hear uh, earning and competition. So I always wanted to earn praise. I never wanted anything to be given to me. So I guess in one way you could look at it, walking onto a field where you see a 2002 NCAA champion sign is something of like, okay, you're part of a program where they're giving you, hey, you had nothing to do with this, but now that you're part of the program, you also, they were national champions last year. And I was like, yeah, but I didn't earn that. And that was my competitive fight of, I want to earn something for this university. I want to be part of something that you can put your name to. So I think earning it instead of just being given it. And a lot of times you earn it through hard work and through failure. And I never wanted anything handed to me. I enjoyed working for things. But yeah, I guess. And if you really look at it, I'm the youngest of four siblings. So probably my whole life, I always wanted to be part of whatever they were doing. I wanted to earn it. I saw what they were doing and I wanted to do it. My brother's just about 6 years older than me. And so whatever he would do, I wanted to do too, but I'm 6 years younger and 6 years less athletic or developed, but I would still try it. And I was fine failing. I was, you just keep doing it. But if I couldn't do what they were doing, I couldn't play with them. Like they leave you in the dust. I had to learn to ride a bike when I was pretty young because they were riding bikes to get around and I wanted to be with them. So in a way, if you really get to some kind of like psychology behind it, it was probably just a matter of being the youngest of four and wanting to belong.
Wow. What lessons do you take from your experience and your time at Wake Forest that you carry with you even now? What are those things that you take with you?
Hard work and teamwork and respect will be the ingredients you need to build a foundation for success. I think one of the things I learned under Jen and her focus on culture and her focus on developing you as a person off the field, right? As student athletes, there's two parts of what we do. You got to be a student, you got to do well in the classroom. And a lot of doing well in the classroom is paralleled um, to being a good athlete, discipline, hard work, putting in the time and effort. So the focus of developing you as a person and pushing you to be your best and go beyond your limits, but also challenging you to work with your teammates to build the culture. And I think definitely one of the things I took into my national team experience was um, working with your teammates to build relationships that can sustain, that can build a culture that you want, that you can sustain competitive excellence. I think that's learning how to do that and how to work in a team environment, to motivate when there may be different goals, to work together when that becomes kind of hard, to listen to teammates when it may not be what your thought is, but all those things in working together to create something that's bigger than yourself is something I've always really enjoyed. And I think now with, being in the real world and having a real job, as I call it, that's still a really big thing for me, whether it's, working on a nonprofit board and working with other board members or on a sales team, with coworkers that I'm currently on. It's that team camaraderie and culture is very important to me. It's one of my biggest lessons I learned taking out of the Wake Forest field hockey family.
So what do you have going on now? What have you been up to?
Well, I now live in Reno, Nevada for over 4 years now. I moved here after I retired for the 2016 Olympics. I moved here with my now husband. And I work for a company called Federated Insurance, and we sell commercial insurance in a niche market, and I love it. I chose Federated Insurance because of the culture that they have at the company. I mean, culture has, because of my experience in sport, has always led me to positive experiences, and that my ability uh, to peel back the layers of Federated's culture, to ask the questions, to see what it truly is, and how people work together and how you're supported. And everything I learned in being a good teammate is what I took into my interview process with the company I now work for. And they passed with flying colors, which is why I accepted an offer to work for them. But so much of it goes back to the foundation of things that I learned through team sport.
A lot of former student athletes that I've talked to, when they speak about their Wake Forest experience as a student athlete, I hear the word family mentioned repeatedly. Would you describe the culture and the atmosphere as sort of a family oriented type atmosphere at Wake Forest?
Absolutely. That's how I talk about my experience at Wake is part of the Wake family. Not only the Wake field hockey family, which um, I stay very close with. They're some of my greatest friends. I enjoy reminiscing and then also looking at the pictures of all their children and all, the family just continues to grow and grow and grow. So that family, I was proud of the day that I was asked to wear a Wake Forest jersey. And that family's always going to grow. But while you're at Wake, the sports family, the athletic department, I think we're a small enough school where, I don't even know what it's at, maybe 5,000 students now. When I went there, it was 4,000.
Yep.
You have an athlete population that's essentially a quarter of your population of all the students. And I think it was small enough to get to know everyone. I think the camaraderie that the coaches between the programs, what they created trickled down into the players and the support that you would have. We loved going to women's soccer games, men's soccer games, football games. Of course, everyone always goes to football and basketball, but volleyball, all the other sports, baseball, like to be able to show support and to get to know the players. I mean, that was your family of sports people. That's who you identified with the most, I would say, because there's a lot more trials and tribulations, I would say, that we went through with the preseason, nicks and niggles and injuries and anything that you can talk about, study hall together, having to get your hours. So, that's probably who you spend the most time with, but you have the most in common with and a relatable college experience. So it was definitely, one of the reasons I chose Wake was it was small enough to build the relationships that I thought I wanted, and turns out I did want. So definitely a family environment there, which was a big pull for me.
You're right. I spent a whole lot of time in study hall, a
Right?
lot of time in study hall.
Punching in the card, which is funny. I'm like, what? I'm literally clocking in.
Yes, I spent a lot of time there. So if you could just give a couple of lessons or pieces of advice for current student athletes at Wake, regardless of sport, what would that be? Two things that you would want to share, two or three things that would you think would be great advice for current student athletes at Wake.
Number one, enjoy your time, have fun. You're in an environment where you get to go to school and learn and compete at a top collegiate level. That is something that you will not necessarily ever get to do again with the rest of your life. So enjoy every part of it. Enjoy every miserable moment. Bask in it. And I'm not even kidding when I say, like, the good times, the bad times, the losses, everything, the time that you're in the locker room, um, really try and soak up every moment, because that's what you miss the most when you leave college. Is you no longer get to end your day in a locker room with some of your best friends talking about who knows what. So enjoy your time, enjoy the miserable parts, enjoy the good times, enjoy the bad times, enjoy the tough times. Enjoy, and I would say challenge yourself while there. I think when I reflect back, sometimes I feel like I didn't challenge myself enough to grow as a person, to grow as a student, to take some of the tougher classes that I was maybe intimidated to take, or to put myself up against the most fit player on the team and really try and challenge them of, okay, I'm going to beat your mile time for this, or whatever the challenge was. I think sometimes we want to go into a safe space and say, okay, well, I'm good. I was good at what I did, but Was I the best example of what I could have been on every day? Did I challenge my teammates enough? So maybe, my senior year, I was a 2-time national champion. I was on the national team. I got to play international levels, but what was I challenging my teammates the way that they needed me to challenge them, to get to their best level? So not only challenging yourself, but challenging your teammates in, on the field, off the field, in your values, in your pursuit of what you think is possible. I just think Wake Forest is such a special environment that allows you, it's basically a safe space where it allows you to fail and have like no repercussions in a way. Now, obviously there's behavioral type things where it could, but it's just, there's so much at the university level that you can use to challenge yourself and to grow and take advantage of those resources, because you might not be in an environment where you're able to see how far you can go in certain realms. So that's what I would say, is have fun and challenge yourself and others.
Last question. So with everything that has happened, when I look back over your career and think about that move and when you made that move with your family and you picked up the field hockey stick and what it turned into, uh, are there any regrets? Anything that you would say, maybe I should have stuck with soccer. Maybe I should have with basketball. Or is there anything you would change about the course of your career in field hockey?
Not at all. And the funny thing that I think about is my dream. I never had the dream to be an Olympian. My opportunities were all, um, whatever came next. I was just open to that opportunity and I said yes to it. I didn't have a goal of making the national team someday. I was on the junior team. My coach said, "Hey, would you want to go to New Zealand with the national team?" I was like, "New Zealand? Yeah, that sounds fun." And just being open to the different selection processes, always working hard and giving it my all. But never looking too far ahead to find out what's there. For me, it was a matter of just constantly being in the moment and enjoying that and following my values and what I wanted to accomplish in that moment. And the next moment always arose with an opportunity that I then looked forward to. So I never worried about, in the college recruiting process, I never worried about what college coaches are watching me and who's doing this and how do I get their attention. I'm being me. And if you don't like me, then this is a relationship with us isn't going to work in a way. So the only thing I did want that I can remember as a kid was I wanted to play soccer at UNC. So I know. And I'm so glad I picked up a stick so that I
Thank
never
you.
went to that other university. I
Thank you.
probably would have never been able to play soccer there. But I feel so fortunate to say that I have absolutely no regrets with the opportunities that I chose to take, and not how easy it was, but when I look at it from that perspective, it was literally just me working hard, having an opportunity come my way and saying yes to that opportunity and just repeating that same cycle over and over again. And I'm very fortunate that I was able to retire healthy on my own right. It wasn't like a coach saying, "Hey, Lauren, you're kind of getting up there in age and we're not too sure you can continue on." I probably had another 4 years to play in the next Olympics, which I'm glad I didn't, because they've been delayed a year. And so hopefully they will go through Tokyo this summer. But I feel fortunate that I look back on my career and don't feel like I retired too early. I don't feel like I made any wrong choices. Then again, I'm sure at some point I did, but I just made them be the right choices, with how I moved forward.
That is great. Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to sit down and talk with us and share your experiences and what you went through and to talk about Wake athletics and Wake field hockey. Field hockey. When you look across the landscape, where do you see the game now as opposed to when you were playing?
I think that we have better athletes playing more sports, which means it's a more competitive field of players. the game is always changing and is always growing. And my hope is that I can try to pay my sport back by giving younger players the opportunity to pick up a stick that I had. I think growing our sport, growing sport in general, but growing team sport. And for me, because my passion is with field hockey, um, that's what I look forward to in trying to pay back the experiences that I had, is trying to get more and more young players with sticks in their hands, or get them on a field, or get them moving, get them involved with team sport, because I think we can learn so much about ourselves, and we can set a foundation that's going to lead us to success in the real world.
Well, champ, thank you for taking the time out again. I just, like I said, when I look back at your career, it was inspiring. It was just wonderful, and I'm glad that you chose Wake Forest and that you brought your talents here and your enthusiasm and positive attitude. And again, I appreciate you for all you've done for Wake athletics, and continue to shine a bright light on what we're trying to do here at Wake. Any parting words, parting shots?
I'm honored that you asked me to be on here. No, this was great. I mean, go Deacs or go home. That's what we always said.
I like that. Wait, say that one more time.
Go Deacs or go home.
Perfect. That is a perfect way. That's a perfect way to end this. Again,